Lord, somebody dead to me that night.
The grand jury hears the facts from both police officers and victims in the Sean Bell shooting case. We're joined by David Schwartz. He is a criminal defense lawyer and a former Brooklyn prosecutor. David, good to have you here this morning.
Thank you, Diana.
This is unusual. This time, the police officers are testifying before the grand jury. Why are they testifying this time?
Yeah, it's always unusual for a defendant to testify in the grand jury, but it's very unusual that these police officers are testifying. Why are they testifying? It's a strategy. You know, there's a lot that comes into play here. And of course, justification in this case is going to be a defense. They saw the vehicle lunging forward. They saw one of the passengers, you know, reaching for what they thought was a gun. The question becomes, were they justified, number one? And second of all, at what point did the justification stop? Was it 4 shots? Was it 5 shots? Was it 6 shots? That's for the grand jury to decide in this case. The officers who fired 1 shot, 3 shots, and 4 shots, respectively, should be treated differently than an officer who fired 11 shots or 31 shots.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, Diana.
We'll see what happens.
We have a guest joining us now to talk about this trial. David Schwartz is a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. David, always great to see you.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Vinny.
Hi, David. All right, let's talk about the medical examiner and specifically this missing evidence.
The jury's got to ask themselves, and I'm sure the defense will help them ask themselves, why didn't the prosecution find the fingernail in the first place?
Because they're human. Because law enforcement's human.
But they're going to argue that they're incompetent. How come they didn't find? How does this help the prosecution besides discrediting Henry Lee? Which, you know what? In the end, I'm not so sure. Henry Lee is not going to admit to taking the fingernail.
No.
The evidence is going to be sketchy as to where that fingernail went. You certainly could look at this evidence 2 ways. In fact, all the evidence in this case, you really could look at 2 ways. And to think that just because somebody may be having a rut in their career, the defense will argue that you created the prosecution argument, Lisa, saying that she had hope. You know what? It really is a wash. It's not probative towards this person committing suicide, in my opinion. And I don't think the jurors are going to think that way either. And they may hold it against the defense in the end for calling the mom.
Should the Davises apologize to avoid a big expensive headache of a lawsuit? Well, we've got criminal defense attorney on board, Lauren Lake, and former prosecutor David Schwartz here to talk about this. Lauren, does Antonio have the right to protect his wife with 1:04 left in overtime, or should he have just let her fend for herself?
Give me a break. Of course he has the right.
This is ridiculous behavior by an NBA player. This is not just a man walking down the street protecting his wife. It's ridiculous behavior. You know what type of havoc could have been caused in Chicago by running up into the stands like that?
David, he didn't even touch him.
Do you know what kind of havoc just running into the stands? It's against every NBA rule imaginable. 5 games is not enough. And you know what? He should be sued for defamation.
All right, let's bring in our legal panel now. Former prosecutor Bill Fallon and criminal defense attorney David Schwartz. So thanks to both of you for joining us. Good to see you both.
Good morning. Morning.
All right, David, I'll begin with you. On Tuesday, as you know, the chief magistrate in the Bahamas will be having a hearing on whether to exhume Daniel Smith's body. Of course, he the one who died last year in September. Now his biological father, Billy Smith, is saying he wants to exhume his son's body, rebury him in Texas. What do you expect is going to go on at this hearing?
I expect that there'll be a full hearing on this. The judge is going to weigh all the evidence. You know, you just can't get a body exhumed. You can't just decide, wake up one morning and say to yourself, oh, you know what, I want to move him to Texas. It doesn't work that way. You need a compelling reason. You need to go into court and find a change of circumstances. You need to convince a judge. It's called the final resting place for a reason, and great deference is given by the courts to that final resting place, and I think that they are going to stay right there in the Bahamas.
The NFL's Atlanta Falcons are taking aim at Michael Vick's pocketbook this morning. The team is now reportedly seeking millions of dollars from the quarterback. This after the NFL announced it was suspending Vick following a plea agreement for his role in a dogfighting ring. Let's bring in our legal panel now. David Schwartz is a criminal defense attorney, and Remy Spencer is a former prosecutor. Thanks for joining us. Given that it was Michael Vick's money, which was essentially going to his friends and funding this gambling ring and the dogfighting, can the judge take all of that into account?
Of course. I mean, that's his participation here. And we talked before how you have to analyze what his criminal culpability is as compared to the other 3 people and why they're getting different deals than Michael Vick. Obviously, his culpability is from a monetary standpoint. And that may be able to work for him or against him, obviously. It may work for him because he had limited participation in the actual fighting itself. He merely funded it.
Reed Seligman there, one of the former Duke lacrosse players, giving some very damaging testimony today about what the rape charges did to his life.
His testimony gives you a window into what the accused actually feels like. I mean, this is just one person, and he was innocently accused, and he had to spend an entire year facing rape charges where he was going to spend dozens of years in jail. You can only imagine what that does to a criminal defendant, and that's why we have the constitutional standards that we do in this country. Unfortunately, Mike Nifong did not abide by those constitutional standards. My heart breaks for them and all the other defendants out there that are falsely accused. It's not just these three guys.
Yeah, David Schwartz, thanks.
Thanks, John.